All right, guys, this video is going to be over conditional statements, and here's our C notes. So what's it about? We're going to have, you'll notice that here on the EQ, and how do I write a conditional statement is where we're going to talk about what is a conditional statement, also how to modify it into the converse, inverse, and contrapositive. So let's see if we can break this down. 3 words you need to know for a conditional statement, and it's going to be over here to the right side. That is an if-then statement. So if you can process conditional under the if-then statement, the if is the hypothesis. You're making a proposition. The then part is the conclusion, and that would be a guess. For example, if I study for the test, then I will pass. That would be a proposition, and then you would have a guess there. So if P, then Q. So let's just kind of break down real quick on here. Quick pause. All right, so got my pen now. So the first thing let's look at is this first one, and we're going to do identify the H and C. So if we have, if angle X congruent to angle R, and angle R congruent to angle S, that would be the hypothesis. And usually I bracket and put H there. Then angle X is congruent to angle S. And that would be our conclusion. So what they're saying there is just the transitive property about building a bridge from X to S through R. And that's actually the transitive property. Just another one, so not as mathy there. So if you have 12 coupons, then you receive a free pizza. So you'll notice that we bracket out the hypothesis, the proposition here, then you receive a free pizza would be our conclusion. So it's really easy to catch on about identifying the H and C. Probably have to do that in some sort of quiz and test. I'm going to do this real quick. As you can see, here is if it's Saturday is the H, then there's no school. That's the conclusion, and that's false. We talk about really the truth value, and the statement is true, false. And if it's false, you give a counterexample, and that would be Saturday school. The next one, if X minus A equals 32, hypothesis then X is 40 would be our conclusion. And that is true because 40 minus 8 equals 32. Next one, if a polygon has 4 right angles, that is our H. And that's the proposition, the conclusion, the polygon is a rectangle. And that is false because a polygon, 4 right angles, polygon's a rectangle. I mean, it could be other ones, but I mean, a square, it seems like that would be an example where that would work out. So again, true, false is just the truth value. If it's false, give a counterexample. The next part you'll notice on conditionals is you'll notice that a TQ could be that you have to write a conditional statement from a general statement. So let's try that. So everyone is going to have an if-then in it. So instead of all apes love bananas, it could be if the animal is an ape, then it loves bananas. So something like that, simple as that. I'm going to look at this one down below because I don't want to run out of time here on the video. For the collinear points lie on the same line, you could have, if you have collinear points, then they lie on the same line. So that would be another example of taking a just general statement and turning it into a conditional statement, if then. Looking over here, a review on the left-hand side there is that we have counterexample, so 3 words for that, and that's to prove something false. If you look at the truth value, it's important to know, and that's the outcome in respect to true and false. So if they say, what's the truth value? You're going to say, is the statement true or false? If it's false, give a counterexample. Let's look at, so that's what is a conditional statement, and that's identifying H and C, and then taking a general and turning it into a conditional statement. So now let's look at the second part of the EQ, and that's how to modify it to converse, inverse, contrapositive. So what we're going to do is that we're going to take the original statement and modify it to converse, inverse, contrapositive. Each statement, all four will have if and then on it. So remember, all four will have if and then. The converse is going to be just switching H and C. Just think of it as a con man, switching things up. So we're going to be switching hypothesis and conclusion. So instead of if P then Q, we're going to have if Q then P. The inverse is just negating, a fancy word for not. So it could be have not, do not. And we want it to make sure to be grammatically correct. So we're not going to switch anything. We're just inputting not. So instead of if P then Q, it would be if not P, then not Q. The contrapositive is going to be where we combine the two. And so we're going to be switching and nodding. So if P then Q would be the conditional. Taking it to the contrapositive, we would do if not Q, then not P. So if that made it confusing, let's do an actual example here. So let's go to the bottom here. If you live in San Diego, is going to be the hypothesis. Then you live in California. That would be the conclusion. So now we have H and C identified for us. So the converse is the switcheroo. So we're going to start with if, and I'm just going to use text language, not grace for language. So if you, and then we're going to say live in California, then you live in San Diego. So that was switching where the hypothesis and conclusion is. Next one, inverse, is just putting not. So we're going to keep everything the same and just put negate, which is not. So this would be if you do not live in San Diego, then you do not live in California. So there you notice that we didn't change anything. We just put not in front of the H and the C. Now we're going to combine. So if you want to, you can actually use a trick here. And you notice that in the converse, we already switched it. So we could actually insert if you, and you can insert here and here. And then we can say negate it, and it's combination of switch and negate, switch and not. So here we go. Contrapositive. If you do not live in California, then you do not live in San Diego. There we go. So that's conditional statement, which is the original up top. We did the converse, which is the switcheroo. The inverse is putting not in front of the H and the C. And then the contrapositive is just switching and nodding. So that would be a good example of the four sentences. You'll notice that we're going to run out of time for the video, but being able to say, is the statement true, false? And you have to give a counterexample. So if you live in California, then you live in San Diego. That would be false because you could live in Los Angeles. That's in California. That would make the statement false. The next one, if you don't live in San Diego, then you don't live in California. Counterexample could be San Diego. I'm going to make it up, Montana. Just know that we live in a big world, and the only San Diego is not in California. There's other ones out there. So just kind of think more, not in the box, but just there's more than you know of whatever city you're living in. Last one, if you don't live in California, then you don't live in San Diego. And that would be false as well. So you can use the counterexample. So the other one about if you don't live in San Diego, then you don't live in California. You could use the LA as the other example. And then the San Diego, Montana would go for the last one on the contrapositive. So all those statements you could prove false. Hopefully you got something out of conditionals. That was a quick overlay, and you're going to have to practice